Alright, so in this project we're going to build a audio player. We're going to use the HTML5 media or audio features as well as JavaScript and jQuery to power it. And you can see this is it right here. We basically have an album here. I just randomly picked Linkin Park. No reason, just kind of grabbed it. And this is actually the album, all these songs on this album. Alright, so basically we'll have an image, which will most likely be the album cover. Alright, if you do have other bands or whatever and you change the song, then their cover should show up. Alright, so that the cover will change. We have our artist and song name. We have the volume control, play, pause, and stop buttons, as well as previous and next arrows so we can go through the songs. We have a progress bar which will fill up as the duration increases, and we also have the time right here as well. And then down here we just have the songs. Alright, so let's go ahead and play the first song. Okay, so we can turn it up, turn it down. Alright, so we can pause it, stop it. Alright, so if we stop it, you can see that the duration goes away. Alright, now if we want to play another song, we can just kind of click on it and it'll play. Alright, we can skip through, go back, and as you can see, as we click the arrows, it changes down here. Alright, so fairly simple, but we will learn quite a bit. So let's get into it. Let's just pause that. Alright, so let's take a look at the file structure. Alright, so it's pretty simple. First of all, we have a media folder, and inside there is our songs. Okay, so this is basically all from the same album. It doesn't have to be. This will work fine if you want to have other bands or whatever, different covers and stuff as well. The images folder is where we have our covers folder. Alright, we only have one in there right now. And then we have our user interface images. Of course, we have our index page. We're going to have one style sheet, style.css. And for JavaScript, we actually don't need, let me just get rid of these. We don't need these here. All we need is the jQuery file and the main.js. So let me delete these. Alright. So what we're going to do is basically just recreate this. Let me make sure that this still works without those files. Alright. And by the way, that little delay there, that has nothing to do with the player. It's just my system, my speakers. It just needs to kind of play for a second to kick in. So that shouldn't happen with you. Yeah, alright, so let's rename this folder. This is going to be our done folder. I gotta close this. Alright, so let's create our new folder. Alright, so let's just grab the media. Okay, so that's not going to change. It's just going to stay as is. And let's create our folders, CSS, JavaScript, images, and inside the images we're going to have a covers folder and our index file. Alright, we might as well create our other ones as well. We'll create the CSS file. JavaScript. Alright, so for the jQuery, I'm just going to grab it from the done folder, but feel free to go to jQuery.com and download it. Or you can, of course, use the CDN if you don't want to actually include the actual file in your structure. So just like with all of our projects, we're going to start with the HTML. Alright, now different developers have different processes for building applications. Personally, I like to, as you probably know by now, I like to do the markup first, then style it, and then give it the, I guess, the power, if you will, with JavaScript or other libraries, jQuery, Ajax, whatever it may be. Alright, so let's get the HTML down. Alright, so paste in a shell here, and let's just, for a title, we'll just say HTML5 audio player. Now if we take a look at the app, you can see that it has this gradient background, and this is actually CSS3 gradient. It's not an image. Alright, so we're doing that through the actual CSS. And then basically we have a container. Alright, so we're going to have a container ID, and everything will go into that. And then we'll put it in the middle, and I think it's 600 pixels or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. So let's link our style sheet. And we'll be doing the styling in the next video. Alright, now, like I said, we're going to have it all in a container div. So let's say div ID container. And basically the way that this is set up, we're not going to really use any of the new HTML5 tags. It's going to be mostly divs and buttons. Alright, so inside the container, the first thing that we see is the image. Alright, so let's create a div for the image. So I'm going to give this an ID of audio image. And then in here we're going to have an image tag, and we're going to give it a class of cover. Now I'm not going to include a source attribute pointing to an actual image, because I don't want it to be static. I want it to be placed in there through the JavaScript so that it can be dynamic, so that it can change when we change the song. So for now we're just going to leave this like this. Alright, and then under the image we're going to have a div for the actual player. This will include basically everything, all the buttons, the progress bar, all that stuff. So div ID, and I'm going to call this audio player. Alright, now in the audio player, the first thing we see, now when I say the player, I mean this, okay, from here down. We have the artist and song info. So let's create a div for that. I'll say div ID audio info, which will also be placed dynamically. So basically all the content is going to be placed through JavaScript mostly. For the info, we will have, let's create a span tag and give it a class of artist, if I can spell it. Alright, so that's going to be empty. We're going to insert that with jQuery. And then we're going to have the song title. So span class title. Okay, so that'll do it for the audio info. Next we want our volume, and this is going to be an input, and this is actually going to be an HTML5 input type range. It's going to have the range type. So we'll give this an ID, volume, and again the type will be range, which will give us a kind of a slider. And then we want to set our minimum and maximum. So the minimum will be 0, and then the max will be 10. And the initial value, let's say 4. Actually, I don't need to do that. HTML5. Alright, so after the volume, we'll have a line break, give us some room. And then we'll have our buttons. So I'm going to create a div with the ID of buttons. And then I'm going to put the buttons inside of a span tag. Okay, so our first button will have the ID of previous. And this is going to look pretty ugly before we style it. Okay, so previous, and then the next button will have our play button. Can't type. Okay, and then next we're going to have the pause button, but initially we're going to hide it, because we don't want the play and the pause shown at the same time. Basically, when you click the play button, it'll turn into the pause button, and vice versa. So pause. Now we need our stop button. And our next button. Okay, so that should do it for our buttons. Now we're going to be floating some of these buttons, so we want to have we want to clear it. Okay, so I'm going to actually create a class to clear floated divs or whatever, called clearFix. Okay, so we just want to put that under any elements that are floated. Alright, so next we're going to have a div with the ID of tracker, which will basically be the progress bar and the duration. So let's just, that will be this area here, including the bar and the time. Alright, and this is the buttons div, and our volume, and our info. Alright, so inside of the tracker div, we're going to have the progress bar, so create a div with the ID. Actually, I want to do camel case here. Alright, so the progress bar div is basically going to include just the empty image, okay, so like this, and then we're going to create another div, well, actually a span inside of that that'll represent the blue that it gets filled with. Okay, so inside here I'm going to put a span, and I'm going to give it an ID of just progress. Okay, and then under the progress bar, we want to create a div for the duration. Actually, I want this to be a span, not a div. I want it inline. And if you don't know, a div element is a block element, and span is a inline element. And basically, the difference is with a div, when you create a div, it goes to the next line. All right, so after this tracker div, whatever you put after it is going to go on a new line. Span will go just right next to it, inline. All right, so that's why in some places I'm using span and others div. All right, so we're going to have some floating going on here, so we're going to paste the clear fix again, and I want the clear fix to go right under the tracker div. All right, and then finally we want our playlist, our list of songs, which is going to be a UL, the ID of playlist, and we're also going to give it a class of hidden. Alright, so in here we're going to have our list of songs, basically going to be inside of li tags. Alright, and each li is going to have a couple custom attributes. Okay, so we're going to have song, we're going to have cover, artist, and that's it. Alright, and then in here we'll have the name of the song. So the first song is called Paper Cut .mp3. Alright, so each song will have this format. Alright, so for the song attribute, it's going to be the name of the file. Okay, so let's go into our media and paper cut. So I'm going to just copy this whole thing and paste it right into the song attribute. Alright, now the cover is basically just going to be the name of the file. Okay, so if we go to images, covers, we don't have it. Alright, so I'm going to have to just copy the images over. Might as well grab all of them. Okay, so the name of the cover is cover1.jpg. Now, we're not going to include the entire path here. Same thing with the song. We're not going to put the media slash, because we're going to implement that inside of the JavaScript so that this can be nice and clean, and we just have the name of the song and the cover and the artist. Okay, so in here we just need to say cover1.jpg, and then for artist, it's just going to be Linkin Park. Alright, so that's basically how we're going to format our songs. And instead of typing all this out, I'm just going to paste it in. Make this a little shorter. Okay, so let me just indent these. Alright, so basically you can put whatever songs you want into this list. If you wanted to take this application a step further, you could build some kind of back end where you could actually log in and add songs through some kind of interface that would just create this HTML. But that's obviously beyond the scope of this series. But that's really it for the HTML. We can save this and take a look at it. Okay, so this is what it looks like unstyled. Very ugly. You can see that there's no data up here because we're going to be inserting that through jQuery. This is the slider. This is the default look of an HTML5 range input type. Okay, so we will be turning this into this. Alright, we'll also have the image. So that's it for the HTML. In the next chapter, we will get into making this look a lot better.